Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm going to be recommending the ultimate spring reads. The books that will make you feel transported to a new magical place, lush landscapes, lovely storying, beautiful writing, the whole 9 yards. Personally speaking, I am a very seasonal reader and I always love to make seasonally based TBRs, so I also like to make seasonally based recommendations for any seasonal mood readers like me out there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I'm going to recommend is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This honestly is just one of the most beautiful books I have ever read, point blank, from the writing style to just everything about it is absolutely transporting. It's also incredibly emotional, and I feel like if you want to pair up some tears with spring showers, this could be a great one to pick up. The story actually follows Shakespeare, but more particularly Shakespeare's family. This story also jumps forward and back in time and follows a variety of different characters all from this one family. We watch a young Shakespeare, never named as such, fall in love with a very strange older woman named Agnes. You see them get married, you see them start a family, and you also see his children as they love each other, but also when tragedy strikes the home and the Black Plague comes knocking. This story, I would say, most particularly centers Agnes, who is just such an incredible woman in general. She kind of has a wild touch about her, very much insinuated that she has some type of like magical ability. She can kind of guess and understand the weather. She is really deeply connected to nature and other types of creatures. She's also exceptional at healing. So nature and the setting of such is very important to this book and story, but I would say the star of the show is for sure the writing. There's so many stunning vignettes that Maggie O'Farrell is able to create, and the portrait that she creates of not only this family, but also just like love and forgiveness and sorrow and pain is just one that will absolutely take your breath away. I also just think it's really interesting as a book that obviously this is following technically one of the most famous figures in history, but again, he's never named, and this is much more just about a family experience. It could really be following any family at any point in time, anywhere, and that's why I think this book feels so timeless. But yes, I love this book so much. If you love kind of history, if you love lush landscapes, if you love to cry, you should read Hamnet. The next book I have to recommend is very, very weird, but again is full of such beautiful landscapes, and that is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valente. This is by far one of my favorite middle grade series. It's so weird, it's so richly crafted, it's so whimsical, but it does have a bit of a dark edge to it, which I feel like is very much true to the fairy tale vibe overall. I feel like most classic children's tales are both strange and wondrous, but also has some elements of like a dire warning kind of built into them, and I feel like Catherine M. Valente is definitely like building off of those concepts. This follows our main character September, who longs for adventure, and one day the green wind shows up on her doorstep and basically sweeps her away to Fairyland. And there she discovers a land full of whimsy and adventure, but also one that is under the shackles and the rule of a very evil ruler. And so she, in the first book, goes off on an adventure to try to save it. You see and experience so many different things in this book. It's so imaginative, and just the experience of Fairyland is honestly one of my favorite parts about it, but the plot is also riveting. So many things that September has to confront and overcome. She conceptualizes her relationships with her parents. She thinks about what it means to be a kid, what it means to grow up. Like, all of these things are kind of explored within this book. It's by no means straightforward, and it is a whimsical ride from beginning to end, and beautiful. Fairyland. I mean, can you imagine a place more full of landscape than Fairyland? I think not. Speaking of Fairyland, the next two books I have to recommend are both heartwarming tales, ones that will like really warm your heart, make you really happy, cute, and also have a romantic element to them. The first is Half a Soul. I am recommending this Regency fairy tale fae series. This is multiple books, so a great one to marathon over the course of the spring months. But the first one follows our main character Dora, and as a child she was actually cursed by a fae, resulting in her having only half a soul. This results in her kind of having some difficulty navigating some social situations, as she now interprets things very, very differently. At the beginning of this book, she is about to enter society with her very dear cousin, and she dreams of finding her cousin the perfect match. Along the way though, she runs into the very grumpy Lord Sorcerer. They begin to work together to try to solve a larger mystery, and and of course, romance begins to bloom. This is a story that has the perfect touch of magic, the Fey realm, but also has all the things you love in a Regency tale as well. Balls, spring, the blooming of nature, summer parties, all of that, and it's absolutely delightful. Again, this is the first book to a series, and I've also read some of the other ones, and they're all a blast and so much fun. A super quick read, a super romantic read, and one that is super cute. Speaking of cute books, I also have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Songu Madana. You want a book that will make you laugh, cry, and just squeal from overall excitement? This is the book for you. In this story, we are introduced to our main character, Mika Moon, and Mika Moon is a witch. She lives in the UK, and she's been raised her whole life kind of in isolation, and also taught that witches should not, one, congregate together because it might draw the eye of regular humans because their magic begins to amplify, but also because of this, she doesn't really have a lot of human friends because she has to hide so much of herself. She does, though, have a YouTube channel where she pretends to be a witch online, thinking that no one will really be able to connect the dots. Until one day she receives a very strange email inviting her to a place called Nowhere House to begin training 3 young witches. She's very skeptical. She knows witches aren't supposed to hang around each other, but she decides to take a chance and travel to this place. And very quickly, Mika Moon is enveloped in the found family of all of our dreams. She meets a very grumpy but very handsome librarian and just meets an adorable cast of characters that you will fall in love with. It has it all. Again, found family is a huge element of this. The magical lessons are also super cool, and there is an adorable rom-com at the heart of this as well. Lots of will they won't they, lots of enemies to lovers, lots of sunshine meets grumpy character. I mean, couldn't put it down. The audiobook is delightful as well. This would not be a spring recommendations video if I did not recommend The Daughter of the Forest. I have to mention something Juliette Marillier in a spring recommendations video because she's the queen in my mind and my heart. Juliette Marillier is the epitome of like cottagecore fantasy. She brings to life folklore and mythology and envelops them into very romantic and very dark fantasy tales. And you see this play out through multiple generations in the Seven Waters series. The first book follows our main character, Sorsha, forced to go on a quest to try to save her beloved brothers and father after they are cursed by her new stepmother. She has to go on this quest through enemy lands and dangerous forests, and she's also not allowed to utter a single word. She finds possible help in the lands of her supposed enemy, and things very quickly get complicated. Again, the series actually follows a new female main character forced to go on a quest within every story, and each subsequent generation of the same family. There's magic and fate and romance, and so many things are intertwined. They are, again, a darker read. The Daughter of the Forest does have quite a few trigger warnings, so I do want to call that out. But if you want a book that centers nature and has some of the best written, like lush, forest, classic landscapes, Juliette Marillier is where it's at. You know what I mean? Like, she's writing Irish folklore in all of these books, and they're all fantastic. Next up, I have 2 historical fiction picks. The first is Beasts of a Little Land by Joo-Hae Kim. It's a very sweeping and emotional historical fiction tale, kind of tying into, if you want to match some tears with the April shower vibes of spring. I really love this book because it takes place over a long period of time and also brings together the strings of fate of unlikely characters. And I also really appreciate the different historical time periods this book is set in. This book opens up in 1917 when an impoverished local hunter in the snowy mountains of occupied Korea decides to save a Japanese soldier. This decision creates a red thread of fate that connects them and many others through time. Fast forward, we also follow a young girl named Jade who is sold to a courtesan house by her desperate family. We see her as she becomes one of the most beautiful and popular courtesans in Korea. We also see her as she befriends a young orphan boy named Jung-ho and his eventual connections to rebellion. Again, all of these characters' lives are very much intersected and intertwined, and it's also existing within a very specific time period in Korea, inevitably shaped the modern world. This book is beautifully written. If you love sweeping historical tales with lots of characters, there are elements of romance to this and just this timelessness to this book. It's one that will really sweep you away and kind of envelop you within the tale itself. It's dramatic, it's lush. I read it very, very quickly, and I also definitely teared up while reading it. Next up, I also have The Library of Legends. I would say is kind of like a historical fiction meets fantasy-esque story. This book is set in China in 1937, and we follow our main character, Hu Lian. And after the bombing of Nanking, she and thousands of university students are basically sent on a 1,000-mile journey, a walk, to basically protect not only them, the brightest minds of China, but also academic materials, and most importantly, a collection of stories and folklore. This book has an intersection of fantasy and history, as I've mentioned, obviously given the setting, but the history and folklore of these stories also begin to sort of of manifest themselves in life, and we see that with our main character. This book is through and through a journey tale, and we follow our main character as she makes friendships, as there is possibly a romance budding between her and a very rich classmate, but things get very, very complicated. Politics also begin to be put at play. She also realizes that she herself might possibly need to flee to protect a family secret. I really, really enjoyed this book. I think the historical setting, the student element of this, obviously its connection to myth and folklore, I thought was wonderfully crafted. It's very emotional, it's intense, but our main character roots the story so well. I absolutely flew through it, and I think all of the landscapes that are present in this, obviously it's a very intense time, but how the author writes the countryside of China, I also think has elements of beauty to it too. And the last book I have to recommend is probably the most pastoral fantasy book I have read in a long time. You already know it's coming, and that is Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I mean, this is just classic fantasy, not only in plot and structure, but I mean the vibes of this is so spring. The fields, the farming, the human civilization, it's just so picturesque, okay? But this book is obviously the first book to a 6-book series by Michael J. Sullivan, known as The Legends of the First Empire, one of my obsessions at the moment. First book introduces us to a slew of human characters, and it's basically set in an ancient fantasy world where human civilization is very much at the beginning. Most people are just farming and trying to survive. They also worship another group of individuals called the Frey as gods. These characters are basically elves. At the beginning of book 1, a human kills a Frey, upending the social structure and also obviously upending the religion itself. Conflict is escalated and explored throughout the first 3 books that I've at least read, culminating in the 3rd and middle book in the series. It's a series kind of divided by 2 trilogies. It's so good. The ancient setting is so cool with developments and just the progression of human civilization being at the heart of it. Fantastic characters, beautiful settings. The magic is very much elemental and has much to do with the land itself. Truthfully, cannot shut up about this series, but for good reason, I feel like. And I also feel like it's a classic and perfect series to pick up this spring. Alrighty guys, those are the books I recommend most checking out for this spring. Please let me know down below some books you love and think are perfect spring reads, as I would love to know. And I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!